Hello, Jennifer, Miranda, Keisha, Veronica, Jessica, Tisha, Lauren, Ingrid, Leslie, Caroline, Lisa, and Danielle. Thank you for another week of great discussion. In week 3, we are halfway through the course. It's amazing how fast these courses go. Thanks for your sharing your insights and interactions. Just wanted to lift up a few things. And maybe the first thing is a big picture thing. If you think back to the discussion that we had during week 2, we were talking about stakeholders and are there certain groups of stakeholders that should be treated differently in certain situations, or do we treat all stakeholders the same? Do we have a kind of concept of fairness for treating everybody equally? And as we explored that question, I hope that you are able to see that the place to start is, as pretty much all of you said, the place to start is to say, let's start with the assumption that we have to treat everybody equally. We have to treat everybody with fairness. We need to respect everybody's rights and interests. That's where we start. That we start with, the golden rule. Treat others the way that you would like to be treated. That's the kind of fundamental guideline for how we interact. But then we have to figure out how that applies in certain circumstances, especially in circumstances where there might be a conflict between the interests of two groups of stakeholders. For example, I talked about, suppose the business suffers a significant loss in market share. Income goes way down, profits go way down. How do we deal with that situation as a leader, as an ethical leader in that business? Because there's choices. We could say, well, we're going to not give dividends to stockholders this year. We're not going to give bonuses to executives this year. We're going to lay off a whole bunch of workers. All of those are options. And to say, well, we should treat everybody equally, we should treat everybody the same, so we should cut 30% of the dividends to the stockholders, we should cut 33% of the dividends to the stockholders, we should cut 33% of the bonuses for the executives, and we should cut 33 or 34% of the workforce. I suppose that's one option, but perhaps it's not the most ethical option. That we can look more deeply into the interests and the effects that cuts would have on those different groups, and perhaps come to the conclusion, well, we can, if we cut some dividends and we cut some bonuses, we can keep our workers, because for them, losing their job means a lot more than losing a bonus or a dividend does for those other two groups of stakeholders. And so to protect them and to serve them well and to keep them as part of the business, because hopefully things will recover and we'll be able to move forward in the direction of profitability and more income in the future, those people will still be part of the organization and will have some loyalty to the organization because of how they were treated. This week we're talking about the difference between codes of ethics in various kinds of organizations. And again, as in week 2, the overarching principle for all kinds of organizations, whether they're for-profit businesses, nonprofits, or governmental agencies, as you all pointed out, the kind of fundamental place to start is the same. That treat others like you would like to be treated. Integrity, honesty, tell the truth. All those basic ethical guidelines, they apply in every organization. Don't act in a discriminatory way. That applies to for-profit, non-profit, governmental agencies. Absolutely. But then, again, how do we apply those important principles of fairness and integrity in specific situations in each type of organization? As Jessica pointed out when she started off our discussion, she said, well, the way that nonprofits relate to their communities means that they have a much higher bar to reach in terms of conforming to community standards. right? If a for-profit business is just there to sell something, if their product is really good, even if they're kind of like, they're not the best people, if the product is really good, chances are they can still survive, they can still make profit, they can still do pretty well. But if you're a nonprofit and you're in a community and people think that you're not quite ethical, you're not quite fair, you're not quite up to the standards of the community, people won't give you money. People won't support you. People won't volunteer in your organization. You'll fail. So, as Jessica pointed out, there's a higher responsibility for nonprofits to adhere to community standards than perhaps for-profit businesses. Which is not to say that for-profits could do whatever they want. That's not what I'm saying. It's just there are different expectations and different standards that those two kinds of organizations are held to. And of course, the other thing is, as several of you pointed out, that the way that specific ethical guidelines are going to get expressed in different kinds of organizations is there will be differences. So a for-profit business is going to have perhaps rules about how dividends are distributed, is going to have guidelines for how you deal with proprietary information within the business. You might not have those. You probably wouldn't have those in a nonprofit. In a nonprofit, you would have ethical guidelines for how you treat volunteers, for how you treat donors, for how you handle donations and tax reporting, things like that, which you're not going to have guidelines for how to treat donors in a for-profit business because you don't have donors. Similarly, in a government agency, you might have strict rules about whether or not people are constituents and how they're treated based on the fact of whether they're constituents of that state or municipality or not. You wouldn't have those kinds of ethical guidelines and rules for a nonprofit or for a for-profit business. So there will be differences in the way that the details get worked out. But again, the overarching concern is pretty much the same basic principles of fairness. But the thing is those basic principles need to be worked out in the details, and the details matter. Because to say to people just, well, you should treat others fairly, or you should be honest, that will mean different things to different people, as we know. And we need to be specific. We need to meet the situation. We need to be able to give guidance to people in the particular situations that they find themselves in, whether it's in a for-profit, a nonprofit, or a government agency. So this week, you'll be taking a deep dive into a code of ethics, and I hope that you'll have the opportunity to explore the code of ethics at the place where you work or a place where you volunteer, and be able to see how it measures up to the standards, and perhaps be able to offer some suggestions for improvement, or at least be able to see how that code serves your organization, whether it serves it very well or maybe not so well in some ways. Again, thank you for all your efforts, and if there is any way that I can be helpful to you, please reach out to me, send me an email, reach out to me through Canvas, send me a text, even give me a call. Have a good week.